Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Kesubos, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Yud, Mishnah 10. And this is going to be a similar situation as a previous Mishnah, but the Mishnah is going to be teaching us something that we actually mentioned at the end of yesterday's class. Rabbi Yosi said, Masa b'tinoikes sheyardel malas mayim min ha'ayin. And one time happened that a tinoikes, a young girl, went down to fill water from a spring, Venenza, and she was violated. She was raped by someone. Okay, and as we have in yesterday's story, or in yesterday's Mishnah, the previous Mishnah, she says, not sure how she knows, but apparently she knows that this person that violated her was not someone that would disqualify her from the kahuna. She knew it. Not sure exactly how, but she knew it. And that's what she said. She said, this person is not in any way, he's not a chalal, he's not a mamzer, he's not anyone that would actually disqualify me from marrying a Kohen, and therefore she's saying she is still permitted to marry a Kohen. So the Mishnah says, Amr Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, Imroiv anshi ha'ir masin lekahuna. Literally translated, these words mean, if the majority of the people of the city, of the men of the city, can marry their daughters to Kohanim, that means that they, right, would not disqualify a woman from marrying a Kohen. They're not a chalo, they're not a mamzer and a sin. If they can marry off their daughters to a Kohen, then that means that they don't have any kind of disqualifying characteristics from kahuna. Because if a man is a chalo, and he was born, let's say, from a marriage of a Kohen and a divorcee, his daughter is a chalala. He couldn't marry off to a Kohen. And similar to other, I mean, if he'd be in a sin, he couldn't marry his daughter to a Kohen. He couldn't marry his daughter to anybody. If he was a mamzer, he couldn't marry his daughter to anyone. So the point is, if we have a majority of the people in the city that can marry their daughters to kahuna, which means they have no disqualifying characteristics from kahuna, harezu tinase le kahuna, then she can marry into kahuna. Then this young girl who was violated, she can marry into the kahuna. So this is, we have something here that we didn't have before. Before, when there was a question of, is this woman under discussion? Has she been disqualified from the kahuna? She makes a claim. And there was a machlekes whether she is believed. And we've said that the halacha follows Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lezer that she is believed. And here in this Mishnah, there's no mention of the argument. We just have Rabbi Yochanan talking about majorities. So therefore, as explained here, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri agrees with Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Lezer, who hold that if a woman cohabited with a stranger, meaning we don't know who he is, she is believed to say that the man is not a disqualified person. Thus, she should be permitted for a Kohen to marry. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri adds, however, that she is permitted that she is permitted only in a limited sense, meaning based on what we said before, namely that if a Kohen went ahead and married her, they remain married. B'di'evet, meaning after the fact. But a Kohen may not marry her in the first place, lechatchila. Okay, this prohibition applies unless most of the men in the local town are known not to be disqualified persons. Okay, so basically, Nemenes in the previous Mishnah, based on her chazaka, on her presumed status we discussed previously, says she's believed, and if she's married to a Kohen, she can remain married to the Kohen. But a Kohen may not go initially and marry this woman, because of the fact that this is part of the stringencies that we place on a Kohen, that in order to preserve the lineage of a Kohen, they have to be stricter in who they marry. However, the Mishnah here is saying, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, that if, let's say, the majority of the people of the city, meaning this happened in a certain or near a certain city, okay, and therefore the presumption is the man came from that city. So if the majority of the men in that city, we know the majority of them are men that can marry their daughters to Kohanim, which means that they don't have any kind of characteristics or status that would disqualify them if they have disqualifying capabilities, so to speak, that they could disqualify a woman were they to cohabit with the woman from kahuna. If they don't have any of those kinds of statuses that would disqualify from Kohen, that's the majority of the people there. Okay, now we say, So we say that the man who now violated her, he left the city, right? He left the city, and he left he left the majority. And if he left the majority, we say he left the city, and we then follow the majority. The majority of people in the city do not disqualified from Kohanim, and therefore the majority says this girl is not disqualified from the Kahuna, and a Kohen can actually go and marry her. L'chatchila, initially. Okay? So far, so good? Mm-hmm. Now, but here's the point. Here's an addition which the Bartanura brings down. The Gemara adds that it is not enough for the majority of men in the town to be eligible. One rov, one majority to work with is not enough. Mm-hmm. Rather, a second majority is also required. In the case of the girl who was violated at the spring, it was also necessary that a group of travelers was passing nearby at the time, and that most of the travelers were not disqualified. Meaning basically we have two possibilities of where this man could have come from, and we have to be able to know regarding both possibilities that the guy came from that we can now look at that person and say he came from the majority of those that would not disqualify a woman from kahuna. Only in that situation where two majorities support her claim, may a Kohen marry her even in the first place. The rabbis require the second majority as an extra precaution to protect the purity of Kohanim. Okay? So now, I'm just going to end off with a question because I'm not clear about this. And that is, so in yesterday's Mishnah, right? Let's just talk about yesterday's Mishnah. She's pregnant, right? And she says she's pregnant from a person whose lineage was pure, was clean, no problems with the guy. And we say, according to Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, she's believed, right? We believe her based on her chazaka, on her presumed status of being kosher to be able to marry a Kohen. And this, until we know that changes, we presume that. So we say she's believed to say that the man his lineage was fine, and he didn't disqualify me or my child from being able to marry a Kohen. But we're saying now that is only she's believed means that if she's married to a Kohen, we're not going to take her away. But based on this, can she go and marry a Kohen? L'chatchila, initially we say no. And the Bartanura said, unless we have the majority of the city. That the Bartanura brought down. Unless we have the majority of the city, then, unless we have the majority of the city, that's how he says it. Right. Right, she cannot l'chatchila marry a Kohen unless the majority of the people of the city, their lineage was fine. Okay? That's all the Bartanura says. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mention there two majorities. I don't know what would be two majorities. The same idea? Not only the majority of the city, but there was a caravan passing by, and the majority of the caravan was also kosher. The majority of them wouldn't disqualify from the Kohen. Do you need that in this case also? The Bartanura didn't mention it in yesterday's Mishnah, but from this Mishnah, and from the way they're bringing down here from the Gemara, it sounds like you would. So it's not clear to me if this idea of two majorities was specific to this case of the girl who went to the spring, or it's not. And my sense is that it's not, and that even in the case before, where she says, we say that she's believed. In the case when she was pregnant, she's believed to say that she became pregnant from a person who wouldn't disqualify her from a Kohen. And the Bartanura says, well, in order for her to initially marry a Kohen, you need majority of the people in the city should be okay. It would seem like there too, you're going to need a second majority of a caravan passing by. Mm-hmm. I guess at the time that, she says that she became pregnant, to say that we have two majorities. It would seem to be that way, but I'm wondering why the Bartanura in yesterday's Mishnah did not mention that. All right, now, the Chofetz Chaim. Okay, now, so the discussion until now has been regarding, believing a person that you trust like two witnesses regarding the rechilas that he's telling you in a situation where he's telling you something that will be for constructive purpose, that you can use it to guard yourself from this potential danger that this person told you that so-and-so wants to harm you. V'chazar b'zman Talmud. All this, says the Chofetz Chaim, is in the times of the Gemara. But nowadays, nowadays, according to the way the Paiskim come to an agreement, halachic authorities agree. Nowadays, a person should not say that so and so is believed by me like two people, and he would never lie, he would never exaggerate, he would never get anything wrong. We don't say that nowadays. And therefore, at the end of the day, you cannot believe what he says, but again, you can use it to be extra precautious. You're not going to look at the person differently. You're not even going to necessarily believe. You're going to assume that this guy doesn't want to hurt you, but just in case that it's happening, you're going to act to protect yourself. And besides that, moreover, it's hard to find all the conditions that we mentioned previously to come together. And the Chofetz Chaim says many people make a mistake regarding this. They'll be very careful about speaking lashon hara and rechilas. Be very careful not to believe what they hear from others. Right? If they hear it from others, they're not going to believe it. However, if they hear it from a relative, their father, their mother, their wife, that's a different story. Then they'll believe it. Why? Because they say, these people never lied to me, it must be true. It's a mistake. Halachically, you cannot assume by anybody that what they're going to be saying is 100% accurate. Let's not use the word true or not, accurate. And therefore, you cannot look at anyone, even a relative, as someone that you can absolutely believe what they're saying. The only thing you could do is believe it or accept it to be extra precautious to protect yourself if it's something that you need to know. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now this caravan